Hi guys, it's Amy here and today I bring you my May wrap up. So we are currently having a typical British summer. All morning I've been waiting for the clouds to clear so that it can brighten up my room and I can film in reasonable lighting, but alas, it's not happening. In fact, it's getting worse. It's been raining now for the past half an hour, so I give up. I'm just going to film it. Today I'm sharing with you all the books that I read in May. I'm going to start with my lowest star rating first and move upwards. Let's begin. So my only 2-star rating for the month goes to Magic for Beginners by Kelly Link. This is a short story collection. I read it with my best friends as our little book club read. All of us didn't really think much of it. All of the stories in this book have some element of kind of surrealism or magical realism, like very weird things going on, and to a certain extent most of the stories I understood, but they just got to a point where I just didn't know what was going on, or the conclusion, that like there was no conclusion, and I think that was the intention. I think that was what these stories are meant to be like, but I just didn't like that. I didn't enjoy not having a conclusion to the story or really understanding what was going on. But I do know a lot of people who would really love that, so that's why I didn't give this one like 1 star, because it was written really well and I did like enjoy the writing and the kind of ideas she was sharing, but I just didn't find I connected to the story as much because I didn't know what was going on in a lot of them. Moving on to my 3-star reads for the month. Firstly, we have Release by Ness. This one I read whilst on holiday. I did really enjoy it. I would have given it 4 stars, but I had to kind of knock down a star just because there was one element of the story that I really didn't enjoy. This basically follows 2 different storylines. The main storyline is this young boy named Adam. The whole book follows Adam over the course of one day. Adam is a gay boy and he is kind of struggling with various aspects of that and how that relates to him and his family and him and his friends and things that are going on with his friends all at the same time. That part of the story is absolutely brilliant. Literally, I was just bowled over by how brilliant Ness writes these kind of characters. I love them so much. Like, I loved The Rest of Us Just Live Here earlier this year and it was the same kind of thing. I just thought it was brilliant. That, for me, that element of the story was like a 5-star read, and I think it would be so brilliant for anyone struggling with similar kind of emotions or similar kind of issues and things to read something like that. So informative, so incredibly empowering, really good. But the thing that knocked it down for me was this second element of the story, which follows this young girl who is in the same year as school as Adam, found dead. She is a meth addict, and then her element of the story is like her as a ghost, but not just her as a ghost. For some reason she is being like possessed by some evil queen's spirit, and this evil queen is trying to like take over everything and ruin everything, and that just plays alongside Adam's story, but just doesn't, I don't understand like what it was doing there, why it was necessary, and how it connected to Adam's story in any way. I think it really took away from how empowering his element of the story was and how important his part of the story was. So that was a shame, but I do honestly think this is a fantastic book, and that part of the story that I didn't like was only in like very small sections, so if you'd like Ness, I would highly recommend this one. Next for my 3-star reads we have Night Waking by Sarah Moss. This one tells the story of a young family who are living on a remote Scottish island. It's told through the perspective of the mother of the family, and the husband is off kind of researching puffins, and so he doesn't spend a lot of time at home and she is kind of left looking after the children. It's a very raw and honest look at what motherhood is, and I liked that element of the story. The portrayal of motherhood in this book is really great. The relationship that she has with her sons and the kind of feeling of being torn between doing her work and having to look after the children and dealing with the husband all at the same time is just, it was done really well. As well as the main family, there's another family that come to the island along with their teenage daughter, and she is suffering from an eating disorder, and the way that all of their relationships kind of interlock is really brilliant. The only part of the story that I didn't really enjoy was the bit that's kind of blurbed on the back as the kind of enticing thing to bring you into the story. The mother, she finds a dead baby, like the bones of a dead baby in the garden, and then becomes fixated with finding out where this baby came from and how old it is and what's going on, and there's stuff to do with the police as well, and I just didn't find that part of the story particularly interesting at all. I was much rather enjoying the relationships with her family and the family that had come to visit the island. So yeah, it was just a standard read for me, 3 stars. My final 3-star read for the month was His Bloody Project by Graeme, Macrae, Burnet. This one is basically like non-fiction. It says here documents relating to the case of Roderick Macrae. So in 1869, Roderick Macrae murdered 3 people in the village that he lived in, and this is the kind of trial and the kind of interviews with various people that lived by him and why he may have done that and how it all came to be, basically. It was an interesting read, and I think the main part of why this was interesting is because Roderick Macrae like always like professed that he was guilty. Like he never like pretended not to have done this crime. Like he turned himself in, he was like placid the whole time, like he never like stood up for himself basically, because he fully believed that he was in the right in killing these people. And you learn all kind of the prior events to him murdering these people. Roderick Macrae came from a very small and quite closed off and somewhat illiterate, like not particularly intelligent village of people. So it's kind of surprising, I guess, when you read this book and you actually read his statement that he wrote in prison as to why he committed the crime and what happened. And it is so well written, like, you know, you wouldn't believe it came from someone of his kind of standing in life. So I really liked that that was included, and I guess it was trying to make you feel sorry for him or kind of want to be on his side of the story. But at the end of the day, he murdered 3 people, and I couldn't really get my head around what this book was trying to do, whether it wanted you to be on side with him or not. It was just a bit strange. And Roderick Macrae's lawyer in this is trying to like plead that he was mad and he didn't know what he was doing, and to me it seemed like he knew what he was doing, and so I just wasn't really on side with his part of the story because like he murdered 3 people. So again, this one was okay, but by the end I was kind of just a bit meh about it all. Moving on to my last section of books, all 4-star reads. Firstly, we have Honor Girl by Maggie Thrash. This one is a graphic memoir. I really loved it. The art style is just really simple but just really effective. This one is Maggie Thrash documenting a time of her life when she was 15 at a summer camp, and she discovered that she may have feelings towards the same sex. These feelings kind of grew within her the longer she spent with this one particular camp leader who was a few years older than her. Just a beautiful exploration of someone of that young age trying to come to terms with things and understand themselves and just being a young girl, and it's just brilliant. What I really loved as well is that it's so in its time. Like I have a feeling that if anyone my age or around my age read this book, you would feel so immersed in it and you would feel as if you could have been at this camp as well, because you know they talk about reading things like Harry Potter, and so it seems very much like of our time, and I really love that. I read this one right back at the beginning of May, and just flicking through it now it's making me want to read it again and just have those feelings again. So yes, I'd highly recommend this one. It's my 4 stars is a comic series which you guys know I'm really enjoying, and that is Deadly Class. This is volume 5 called Carousel. I can't really go into what this one is about because it's volume number 5, but basically I really love this series, and the end of this one brought it up from a 3 stars because I wasn't really like loving it to a 4 stars because the end was just fantastic. So yes, if you're reading the series and you haven't got to this one yet, I would highly recommend. Next we have my classic for the month, and that was Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. This one definitely is a lot different to Rebecca and My Cousin Rachel. It just has a different feel. It's very dark. Although the other two had elements of the kind of gothic and darkness to them, this one is just pretty gruesome all throughout. This one follows a young lady named Mary who goes to live with her aunt and her uncle who was married into the family after her own mother dies. She goes to live with them at their home, which is called Jamaica Inn. So basically Mary goes there to live with her aunt and uncle, and she discovers that her aunt has completely changed to what she knew of her aunt before she was married. Her aunt used to be very bubbly, happy, wonderful lady, and she gets there and she sees this beaten down, decrepit, just absolutely ghastly looking woman, and the uncle is just the most horrendous and horrific man you could ever imagine. Like, he brings chills to my soul just thinking about him. So Mary enters into this home with a bit of trepidation because she sees how run down and horrendous it is, and she is warned by the uncle to stay in bed at night even if she hears wagons on the road and even if she hears men or people talking, to stay in her room and do not disrupt anyone because she would not want to get in trouble. The crux of the story is that this dastardly uncle is running a smuggling campaign through Jamaica Inn from the coast, and it's just wonderful. It reminded me of Poldark as well, which I love, which is coming out next Sunday, guys. It's Poldark season 3. I'm so excited. So yes, I did really enjoy this one, but not quite on the same level as Rebecca and My Cousin Rachel. I still really loved it though, so I would highly recommend. Next for my 4-star reads we have Shelter by Jung Yun. This one fell in a puddle whilst I was on holiday, so it looks a bit battered. This book was incredibly intense, a real page turner, Quite a bleak and depressing novel though, so I wouldn't recommend if you're already in a blue mood to read this book, because I don't think it would make you feel any better. It follows a Korean man who is married to an Irish lady and their family. They are planning on selling their home, and whilst the realtor is there, they all look out into the garden to see this man's mother in the garden, completely naked and completely battered and bruised. This book is the fallout of that event and how it affects his family, the relationship with her and the father, and what has actually happened with the father, because there's more to that story as to why the mother has been in the garden in the first place and how she got there, and what's going on in her home with her husband. It just shares so many incredible things to do with relationships, but also kind of Korean culture and how that plays into their marriage, because obviously the wife is Irish and she just doesn't have the same kind of upbringing as the man. It took turns that I just didn't expect it to, and it just explored so deeply into like a man's psyche and how you are brought up and how that could affect you in later life. My goodness, it was such a dark and gripping and page-turnery read. I would highly, highly recommend. Next for my 4 stars we have Shirley Jackson's The Bird's Nest. You guys know I'm reading all of Shirley Jackson's work this year. I think this is the 3rd book I've read from her. This one follows a young lady named Elizabeth who has multiple personalities, and she is going to a doctor. It's told through the perspective of Elizabeth and her various different personalities, and then the doctor trying to help her kind of put herself back together, basically. I feel like this is a great dive into what a person's mind can do under a great amount of stress and certain traumatic events, and how that can cause your own mind to break and to turn on you and do various things that you may not even be aware of. As the book goes on, you just see Elizabeth kind of spiral down this descent into complete and utter madness and not knowing how to cope, and this poor doctor as well is not coping very well, and it's just a brilliant like look at all that kind of psychology stuff, and I love that kind of stuff. This is a really enjoyable one for me, and I definitely look forward to continuing on with my Shirley Jackson reads this year. And my final 4-star read for the month was HHhH by Laurent Binet. This is translated from French. This is a historical type fiction, although it's somewhat non-fiction, because it details the assassination, or the attempted assassination, of Reinhard Heydrich in 1942 in Prague during World War II. So although the events of this book are true, obviously the author is kind of weaving their own story around it and trying to get the facts out of the like fiction and all of that kind of stuff. That is one element of this book that I really, really loved, because it's not simply Laurent Binet telling the story of this attempted assassination. He is also looking into how you actually go about writing a book like this, and how do you pull out the fact from the fiction, and how do you know when you're reading a book like this that the author isn't just kind of bending the facts and making something seem more important than it is, or pulling out what they want from the facts to support their own plot line and their own story. The actual story of the assassination, it was so interesting, and it made me like go and read and kind of research into it a lot more, because the aftermath, the guy actually died, like although it wasn't directly from the assassination, like people kind of killing him, if you get what I mean, like it was secondary injuries. The aftermath of that assassination and what Hitler then did to various, like he literally wiped a like town off the map, or a couple of towns, and just like bulldozed it basically and flattened it and wiped it off the map, and the worldwide devastation and aftermath of Hitler doing that and that happening, it was just amazing. Like I implore anyone to go and look into this if you're interested in World War II and you find the kind of these things interesting, because like I was just blown away by it. There we are. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Do let me know what you've been reading. If you read any of these, let me know what you thought of them. As always, I will leave links to Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, everything I've mentioned today down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I will see you soon. Bye!